The last words that someone speaks before they are taken up to the next realm are usually very precious to the person who is speaking them. For example, when I was a child, my grandfather was dying, and I didn't know that, but obviously he was, and so they asked me to go to his bedroom. I was 5 or 6, and I knew something serious was going on, and he was lying in bed, and he said, "Themi, stopli." And he started telling me his last desire for me, what I should be, what I should do in life, and who I should be. That was his final will and testament for me. And he had words to my father and my mother and so forth. But to me, I still remember my grandfather passing away and giving me his last words, his last will and testament. And I'm sure many of you have had that experience of the final words spoken by someone you love very much. I say this because I'm going to talk tonight about perseverance. You will need perseverance, and you will have many challenges. You really do have many challenges in your mission. So perhaps from my personal experience in West Africa, you can draw some parallels if they are in any way relevant. But so be it. So therefore, the change that occurred tonight. So getting back to the last words. You have to consider that the last words of Jesus must have been very important to him, and as a personal, it was like a personal desire of him to make sure that his final words were to be heard loud and clear. So he gathered his disciples before his ascension and told them his last will and testament. Now, in Hebrew culture, we have this testament literature. Job, it's apocryphal, but it's there if you want to look at it, where the dying patriarch, Abraham, Job, whatever, says words to his son, Isaac, or whoever. And so it's a genre, it's a literary genre, the last will and testament. But when we come to the Lord Jesus Christ, then we find that his last will and testament is, let's go through this. It's one of the external challenges that we face as Christians. It is the Great Commission. What are we doing about it? Okay, so the first great challenge that we face, all of us face, is the Great Commission. Now, Father Paul, would you mind reading that?
And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit."
Right, so that's the Matthean version. Go to Mark, please, the next one. Yes, Father?
He said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He who believes and is baptized will be saved, but he who dies not believing
He
will be
does
condemned."
not. That's a mistake, yeah. Yeah, so in both traditions, in the Markan tradition and the Matthean tradition, we have this Great Commission. It's interesting that in the Markan Gospel, that is one of the endings that is disputed. We have 5 endings to the Gospel of Mark. That's one of them, the long ending of the Gospel of Mark, because apparently from Efovundorar, chapter 16, verse 9, it stops there, and then we have various other endings. I'm not sure whether you're aware of that or not, but if you are aware of it, the church itself never reads the long endings of Mark. It always stops at Efovundorar for the women, and they were afraid and they left the tomb and said nothing to no one. It's like it ends like in aporia. It ends in the way that Plato ends his dialogue in, we're not sure what the ending is. It's aporia. But I don't think that was Mark's intention. I think there is an ending, and most scholars believe that this is probably the ending that is most relevant, because it coincides with Matthew, whose ending we do know for sure. So the Great Commission is definitely part of the commandments of Christ before he ascended into heaven. Okay, so that's our first challenge. What are we doing about it? Are we going to all the world preaching the gospel? Are we baptizing people all over the world? Which is what Christ said. Now, when will the parousia take place? When will the second coming of Christ occur? Well, we're not sure, but we have signs and we have what Christ said. And what Christ said? He said that nations will have war against nations, there will be pandemics, he said it very clearly. There will be earthquakes, there will be hunger, people will turn cold, but the end will not come until the gospel, my words are preached to the ends of the world. In other words, the parousia cannot occur unless the gospel is preached throughout the whole world. Now, if you look at the whole world now, you'd say the parousia is a long way away. Because, first of all, we can't preach in China. Number two, where I am in Africa, there's no way I can go to Somalia and preach. I'll be killed right away. There's no way I can go to Sudan and preach. Khartoum, for example, the capital. No way. It's an Islamic fundamentalist, okay? Try preaching in Libya and see what happens. So there are many parts of the world that do not want to receive the gospel of Christ. And that's a challenge that we have as a Christian church. What are we doing about that? Our Protestant friends, you know what they're doing? They're beaming radio programs to these nations, and their thinking is, well, the quicker we do that, the quicker the second coming will occur. So if you take this seriously, and I hope you do, that the end will not come until the gospel is preached throughout the whole world, then we are far away from the end, but we have a commission to do it. We have a commission to preach it throughout the world so that the second coming can occur. So that's how important this mission work is. This is how significant it is that we should be involved in preaching the gospel all over the world, and even risking ourselves for the sake of the second coming of Christ. Okay, so that's the first challenge, the Great Commission. Now, and that's an external challenge, because we have different challenges in our ministries. The other challenge which needs perseverance is the lack of manpower that we have in Africa. All of my priests are African, wonderful men, good men, but haven't grown up in the Orthodox Church, and not really at this point, after 16, 17 years of Orthodoxy. There's still a long way to go before the Orthodox phronema has settled in. Okay? So we have need, this is one of the challenges that we face, we have needs of people like yourselves coming, maybe staying 2 or 3 months. That has to be negotiated, of course, with the Holy Metropolis and the Metropolitan and His Eminence, whereby you bring your orthodoxy that is established, an established orthodoxy, to us over there, whether it be for chanting, whether it be for teaching purposes, whether it be for spiritual confession and so forth. You know that confession is a big problem for us over there, because they don't trust each other, that if I give my sins to Father Paul, he's going to tell everybody what I told him. So whereas they trust me because I am not a stranger, but I am an outsider, they will not trust their own priests. So while we have consecrated father confessors, there's hardly any confession going on because of this element of lack of trust, you see. So that's another challenge we have, and how to overcome it. Every time there is a visiting priest, they will flock to him to confess. The present Bishop of Melbourne, then Father Kyriakos, came as an archimandrite and monk, and he did many confessions. But when he left, that was it. That was it. So we do need to we have a great need to have people coming from overseas, fathers coming in, father confessors coming in, and doing a lot of confessions and so forth, because they will not trust their own local priests. So that's another challenge that we have. The other challenge that we have is economic. Unfortunately, it's an economic challenge. You can't run a mission without money, unfortunately. And therefore, you become a beggar for the mission. And you spend time overseas trying to get help, whereas you should be back with your flock. Now, I've been missing for several months now. I was in Australia, a beggar. Now I'm in the United States, a beggar. And when I should be in Sierra Leone, but I can't. Because if I go back, we're not going to be able to run the mission, you see. That's a very big challenge. It's a huge challenge. And there are ways we are thinking to overcome it. One way that we are thinking is, first of all, because if you rely only on donations, there is something called donor fatigue. If somebody comes back to you every year asking for money, it's not going to work. Okay, donor fatigue. Then you're relying on economic conditions that are favorable. What if there is a downside? What if America or Australia or Canada or whatever have a depression or inflation or a time of economic crisis? You're not going to get anything. During the COVID crisis was shocking. We couldn't get any help whatsoever, hardly any help whatsoever. The way out of it, which is what the Catholics have done, is income generating projects. The Catholics, for example, in Kenya, I don't know if Father is here or not. Are you here, Father?
Yes, I'm still here.
Is he here? I can't see. Yeah. The Catholic Church in Kenya runs or organizes, believe it or not, tobacco and coffee. Huge farms of tobacco and coffee. They don't need Italy to give them money. They don't need the Vatican to give them money. They have their own income generating projects. They have, of course, been there far longer than we have, so they have that advantage. When things were cheaper then, and they could buy farms, they could buy all this, it was not a problem at the time. So we now are thinking in Sierra Leone, how can we raise money to stop coming overseas all the time and asking for donations? And Father, that's something Kenya has to think about as well. We all, in Africa, we have to think about that, you know. Father?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how we can resolve the problem. But then, what kind of business are you going to get into to raise money? How are you going to? What will you do? Well, there are many things we've been thinking of: buying property and then renting out the property. So I have a whole group of young men and women who have appointed in a committee, an income generating committee, to come up with different ideas how to raise money. The other option we have, because computers are now starting in West Africa quite a bit to set up like an internet cafe. That would be very popular, and things like that. So we are trying to figure out how we can start with something low budget, with low capital, and then expand it so that the need for overseas donations will not have to be so significant. But that's another challenge that we have, to become self-sufficient. Then the other, these are all external challenges besides the internal ones. We have the geopolitical challenge that is really affecting us now in Africa. And Father perhaps can tell us more about Kenya, but the geopolitical challenge is the new Cold War between the United States and the Russian Federation. So unnecessary, such a waste of time. It shouldn't be happening. It is. What a pity. We should be getting along with everybody. Okay. Now, how does that affect us? It affects us. I'll show you how. Let's move on. Now, if you know French, you will see "Vive le Niger, vive la Russie." There are many countries now that are ditching the United States and turning to Russia. Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali. West Africa is becoming pro-Russian. The exception is Sierra Leone. We are pro-American. But the many other nations are pro-Russian. Now, what does that mean? It means that the influence of the West is slipping away. And as I said to you this morning, China and Russia have now moved into this vacuum. Why is that? Why would they do that? Because when South Africa was an apartheid state, we supported the apartheid state. When I say we, I mean the governments of Australia, the governments of America, the governments of Europe. We supported a regime that was anti-black and was white supremacist. We supported them. But the Soviet Union did not. The Soviet Union would give arms to the South Africans. They would give arms to the Mozambicans and Cuba as well. Che Guevara came to Africa in the Congo. He came to fight. And so to the African mind, the people who helped them to liberate themselves is not the United States, it's not Europe, it is the Soviet Union. They were the big friends of the liberation of the African people. Now, nowadays, this has come to a reality, and they are turning back to the Soviet Union successor, the Russian Federation, and that's produced for us Orthodox a dilemma. What's the dilemma? Well, here's the dilemma. Remember, we're talking about external challenges to our work as missionaries, okay? This is one of them. Alexandria was caught in a sandwich, the Patriarchate of Alexandria. Should we side with Moscow, Patriarchate, or should we side with Constantinople? I had a word with his beatitude, and I said we will remain neutral. That was my opinion, because I knew what would happen if we did not, and it did happen. However, in the greater wisdom of my patriarch and the Holy Synod, they decided to that Constantinople must at all times be aligned to. And they did. Result: Russia, the Patriarchate of Moscow, they set up an exarchate, the Patriarchal Exarchate of Africa, 2021. They've established churches in various parts of Africa in direct competition with us. They have more money. You know, they have money. They have serious money. And it's being used as a soft power to promote Russia and to promote the agenda, the Russian agenda. So we cannot compete with their money. And so a lot of our priests, I don't know in Kenya whether they've taken churches. Have they taken churches over, Father?
A few.
Have they?
A few.
A few.
A few, but very many pricing.
Right. But they're offering more money to the priests, right?
Yes.
A lot more?
A lot more, yes.
A lot more. Do you think there will be an exodus of many of the priests towards that?
Yes, they have already had like many of the clergy who had small parties.
And are they building churches in Kenya?
They have already started building churches.
So now we had a continent where we had one patriarchate. There was no other patriarchate. A lot of our Russian friends in Kenya, there are many Russian women who married Kenyan men. They married Russian women, as Father knows. And St. Cosmas in Nairobi is so many Russian women there, right? And they came over. So in a sense, they were coming to the Greek church. There was no Russian church. There was no Antiochian church. It's just one patriarchate. You know, it was so good to know that you're in a continent, there's only one Orthodox church. It was like a miracle. You know, because look at us here, look at us in Australia. We've got Bulgarian churches, you've got Romanian churches, you've got Antiochian churches, you know, the Mongolian churches pretty soon, you know. So it's too much. It's too much. You know, we are one Orthodox church, right? So, but in Africa, we did it. We did it in Africa. We did it. Now, because of geopolitical tensions between America and Russia, we have to put up with this. You see? What can I tell you? So, that's another challenge. In Sierra Leone, they will not come. They will not come because the government is pro-Americans. So is your government sort of like divided on this issue, Father?
The government is pro-American, but the people, they rebel.
They're pro-American, but?
The people, the populists are
pro-Russian.
Pro-Russian, but the government is pro.
But the government is pro-American. Okay, okay. All right. So this is where we are. And I'm not taking sides, by the way. All I'm saying is the Orthodox Church has now become divided in Africa when it should not be divided because of political issues. Unbelievable. Another challenge. But that I can do nothing about. All right, so here are some of the challenges we are facing. Now, I come to internal challenges. Challenges that are in the country itself, not outside, but inside. Number one, corruption. We dealt with it this morning, the issue of corruption. Unfortunately, developing nations have a lot of corruption. Kenya has corruption, we have corruption. How do you deal with it as a church? I told you this morning how we deal with it. We don't look at it as bribery, we don't look at it as being part of the corrupt system. We look at it as in the traditional African sense of we are giving a gift to the chief. We're giving a gift to the chief. So in that way we can justify our work, because we've got to build, we've got to produce, we've got to help people, we have to have schools, we have to have orphanages, hospitals. Where do I get the land? The land can only come from the government. So yeah, so that's unfortunately what a challenge we have to put up with. So that's one of them, corruption. Then we have crime. Crime that is more than usual due to the poverty levels. Kenya is very bad for crime. It's very, very bad. Even one of our metropolitans was nearly killed by people coming into his house and robbing him So we do have that problem. I must say, however, in Sierra Leone, it's not as bad as it is in Kenya. And they tend to have more respect for the robe in Sierra Leone. They have more respect. For example, if I'm driving down the highway to go from one town to the other, and the police stop us. Now, the police usually stop you, and if you're a white man, they do it for money. They want money from you, right? And they will find something to say, oh, the car, da-da-da. Oh, okay, here's $10, no problem. The car is okay now, you can go. Now, what I find is when they stop us, they will say, oh, men of God, go, 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 men of God. So they have respect for the Raso, they have respect for men of God, and therefore it makes it easier for me. But we are forced to have security guards in all our compounds. I have to have 3 or 4 security guards on our compounds, because otherwise we're going to lose everything. People will come in at night and take the same thing in Kenya as well. So that's unfortunately a reality for us that we have to persevere with and accept and deal with that. Crime. Now there is another one which is quite extraordinary. The medical side of it. The state of the hospitals is not good. At least in Sierra Leone, it is not good. We could have 2 or 3 patients in one bed. The doctors, if you don't have money, they're not going to treat you. The way in which you get help is by giving money. So you go to the hospital. When they see that you are someone with money, immediately things happen. But if they believe that you're a poor person, you'll stay out in the street and you may die out there. So the medical situation, it was in Sierra Leone. I don't know about Kenya. Maybe things have got better there. Number 2, the medical facilities are not up to scratch. So that's another problem. And then medical supplies is another problem. So what happens if you get sick? What do you do? It's a problem, particularly for us Westerners when we're being there. And we have a whole array of diseases, a whole sort of catalog of diseases in West Africa, ranging from malaria, typhoid, tuberculosis, Ebola, called hemorrhagic fevers, different types of hemorrhagic fevers, typhoid, and so forth, yellow fever, and so forth, rabies and so forth. So we have a lot of diseases there, but we avoid them. I wear gloves quite a bit. I got used to that actually. Sometimes I even do it in America and Australia. They say, why are you wearing gloves? I don't know. It's a habit. And so we can avoid them if we know how to deal with them. With mosquitoes, which is the biggest killer in Africa, is the malaria mosquito. It's the female, and usually at night, not always, but usually at night. So what we do with all people who come to us, nets. We all have mosquito nets. That's a must. Also, we advise volunteers not to have shorts at night or short sleeve because the mosquito will bite them. So that's another challenge we face. And when Ebola came, that was quite serious. Okay, this is the region where Ebola struck, and we were right at ground zero of the Ebola crisis. The other challenge we face that I don't know how to explain it here is magic. West Africa is the home of voodoo, but we don't call it voodoo, we call it juju. And from juju, when the slaves were taken from West Africa to the New World, particularly in the West Indies, they brought with them juju, which became voodoo. Now what juju is magic. you summon the powers, the demonic powers, and you get rewarded for it by these powers. And it's quite widely believed in. It's acceptable and quite widely believed in. And it's also the same in Kenya, right, Father? Yeah, absolutely. But Father, we've got the original one, the voodoo one, the juju one. I'm not sure about what Kenya's type is, but we have the one that came here as voodoo. So, I'll give you an example. They have rice, a piece of rice, and you go to the witch doctor, and you say, you know what, I don't like Kasama Mombuna. I want him hurt. So the witch doctor will take a piece of rice, just a small piece of rice, and he will take a string, and he will make what looks like a revolver. So when the guy passes by, he throws the rice at that person, and that person is shot by the witch gun. And once you're shot by the witch gun, it's all over. You will get sick, you will do this, you'll go crazy, whatever. And they believe that. So I keep telling them, okay, bring all your witch guns, throw as much rice as you want on me. I guarantee I'm not going to go crazy, right? And they say, no, it's not going to work on you because you're a white man. You know, so, yeah. So that's the trouble, that a lot of magic. And the Holy Communion, even one of my priests that I actually kicked out because he was using the Holy Communion as magic for power, and he wanted to hurt people, and so he would put something in the communion to hurt people. So we found out, we got rid of him. Because what happened to the Holy Communion was that it was becoming magic. It was becoming voodoo. You understand? So that had to be completely stopped. But to this day, the indigenous priests still believe in juju. They still believe in it. And that's a real challenge. That's a serious challenge. Because we believe in Christ, the blood of Christ that cleanses us and protects us from all demonic powers. And yet here you have even your own priests that think that there is power in juju. There is power in juju. The other element of this juju, and I don't know whether it exists in Kenya, is human sacrifice. Now, what they do is, particularly during election time, right? If you want to become a politician and you win an election, you sacrifice a baby, you sacrifice a young child, virgin child. And what we do in our schools during election time is nobody's allowed to take any child out unless we know who they are. And we've already gone through that process with our teachers, so that you're allowed to take your child out by having some sort of card or something we give them, so you're authorized. But we will not hand a child to anybody that we don't know about, or just comes in. Okay, so that's another issue, child sacrifice. Does that exist in Kenya, Father? Child sacrifice?
No, it doesn't.
It exists with us. It exists over there, unfortunately. Particularly election time, during election. The other issue that we face there is child trafficking, where people come in and just get children. The government has started to become very much closing down doors as much as possible. So we have a lot of people coming in from Greece, believe it or not, to adopt children. We actually host a lot of the Greek people coming, Greek couples, young Greek couples who cannot have children. They come to Sierra Leone and they adopt children there, but they're legitimate. But there are others who come in to do the same, but to use those children for child trafficking purposes. The other one, which is quite extraordinary, is baby factories. The baby factories where you get many women, they get pregnant, they have children, babies, and those babies are sold for body parts or for adoption overseas. So they are actually baby factories. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. And so we really, as a church, have this function of policing over the children that we're in charge of because of all these challenges. Now, let's look at some of the other internal challenges. The traditional African worship, which includes in West Africa, I'm talking about West Africa, not Kenya, okay? It includes things like the sacred tree, or the sacred river, or the sacred rock, and so forth, right? And there are other parts to it. So how do we adapt to this challenge of trying to merge the Orthodox Church within the traditional African religious traditions? Our policy is always to St. Paul's attitude: to the Greek I become a Greek, and so forth, and to the Jew I become a Jew, and so forth. So if you can come to that part there, I'm not sure whether we are still there or not. So to that degree, we try to find whatever is common in their religious traditions to incorporate within it, but without compromise in any way to our doctrines. Then, worship. As I said before, the most popular and most populous churches in West Africa are the Pentecostal churches. There are many reasons for the Pentecostals having such large numbers when they have church services. One of them is our church has a particular attitude to worship, that worship should be serious, it should be solemn, it should be sober, and it should be orderly. That's not what the West Africans like. They want spontaneity. I'll give you an example. What is the body language of the Orthodox pious in the congregation? The body language is usually like this: head down and standing still. You don't move. It's like a statue, okay? So that's the body language of the pious Orthodox, which comes from the monastic tradition. That is alien to the African ethos. The African doesn't want to stand still. The West African, he doesn't like the idea of solemnity. He prefers happy. So they prefer the Pentecostal church because it gives them the opportunity to jump, to clap their hands, to shout out, rather than stand there for 3 hours immovably. Now, we are used to it and we consider it a virtue. We see this inactivity as a virtue because it is be still and know that I am God. It's the stillness of the body, the stillness of the mind before the presence of God. But they're coming up with a different perspective from their own cultural perspective. The need to dance, because in traditional African religion there is dancing, there is clapping, there is jumping. You should see the Maasai people of Kenya, how far they jump. So this makes the Orthodox unattractive to the African initiate. That's a great challenge that we have. How do I overcome that? How do we overcome this barrier between worshipping styles? Well, the Pentecostals have won the battle. They've got everybody, right? But we are attracting people despite everything because of our charity work. Because we provide free education, we provide food after church, we provide medical assistance, we do all that. The Pentecostals don't need to do that. They don't have to do anything. All they do is clap their hands, shout hallelujah, and sing, right? And that's very attractive, you see. So what I then do is try to incorporate a bit of that. In other words, remember, to the Greek I become a Greek. To the Sierra Leonean I must become Sierra Leonean. So therefore, I incorporate some of this West African attitudes within the church, within the liturgy. How? Okay. This is me preaching in Australia. Okay? This is how I would do it. Αδελφοί, σήμερα το Ευαγγέλιο μας μιλάει περί της Αναστάσεως του Κυρίου και οι μυροφόρες γυναίκες. Okay, fine, acceptable. No. Africa. Today, brothers, big day for us, extraordinary day for us. You've got to make it oomph. You've got to make it alive. And then they will say, hallelujah. And then you say, and then I say, after every sentence, I will say, Jesus rose today, hallelujah, hallelujah. You know, and I get that response from the people, you understand. Then in the liturgy, without compromise on doctrine, without any compromise on anything, we do allow, maybe they play drums, or they break into their own song. They break into traditional African, praising God. And so we let them do that. You see, in that way, we have become more African friendly. Because if you take the church as we have it today and put it into West Africa, then they don't like it. Hello? Anybody here? Yeah. They don't like it. Okay? So it has to be put in more African color until, as in Kenya, they're far older than we are, many more years in Kenya than we are. We're just babies, 16 years. Kenya is tens and tens of years until they get used to it. And that's why we have schools. So by having the schools, eventually, the more traditional Orthodox way will become normal. But right now, it's alien. Finally, the personal challenges that I face in the mission field. A couple of them. One, you are a foreigner. I wasn't born in Sierra Leone, but here it is. I was born in Africa. In Kenya, they used to call me Muzungu, which is not a good term. And I went up to them and said, I'm not a Muzungu, because I was born in Africa. A Muzungu is a term for the British imperial powers. I said, no, apana, I'm not a Muzungu. Well, why not? Because I was born here, I was born in Africa, I was drinking the waters of the River Nile before you were born. Okay, you're a Mwafrika Mwope. Tell them what that means, Father.
White African.
I'm a white African, you see. So in that way, I got accepted as an African, okay? So that's good. So I overcome that challenge of not being an African. The other challenge that we face is my own personal challenge, because this is what this talk demands, is I have certain limitations of my vision. I'm actually legally blind in Australia. I'm classified as being blind. So if I want to read, that's how it is, okay? That's why I got the Father to read. I have a serious visual problem. But perseverance. I get away with it by learning the prayers by heart. So I know, I can recite most of the prayers off by heart. Not all of them, but many of them. So I don't need, I can have the book there just to, every now and then I could look at it. But so I can get away with that. But there are many times that I can confuse people because I don't know who they are unless they come very close, and that can lead to certain misunderstandings, or in other ways it can become a problem. But eventually, when they realize that I am handicapped in that way, I will get respect for it rather than ridicule. So when I get up in the liturgy and start reading the gospel like that, they will not laugh, because they realize that it's something that demands respect. Where in the beginning they will wonder what's going on, but after a while they will accept it. Okay. There are other personal challenges you have to meet, like learning the language, the local language. You have to learn the local language as best as you can. And in that way, you become even more acceptable by the people. So in short, brothers, these are some of the challenges that I have to face in Africa. And I hope in explain them to you that you may get something out of them for your own missions in your own towns and parishes. So God bless you and thank you. Question time?
Yes.
Yeah. Any? Oh, I forgot something. Saint Martin, right?
I was going to remind you.
Yeah, Saint Martin. From this morning's talk about how Christ identifies with the poor, there is the story of Saint Martin, Reyes Martinos, who was walking down the street, and there was a beggar who was asking for help because he was cold and he needed something to wear. And Martin removed his coat and gave it to him. That's all he had. He gave it to him. And that very moment in the kingdom of heaven, we are told by the tradition that Jesus was being on the throne, surrounded by the angels who were glorifying him. And one of the angels dared to ask him, "Lord, why are you wearing an old coat?" "Because my friend Martin gave it to me today. Helping the poor is giving it to Christ." So remember that, okay? All right, any issues on what we spoke either this morning or tonight? I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Grace. This is kind of a question from both this morning and tonight.
Yep.
I was curious and didn't get a chance to ask about what. So you said that, for example, you've done mass baptisms with as many as 150 or more people in a single
One day, yeah.
That people are kind of catechized by putting it into their schooling, and the parents, I guess, learn at the same time. And then you also mentioned tonight that many of your priests still believe in juju.
They believe in it, doesn't mean they practice it.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of them was practicing.
Yes.
And so my question is, what is the process of formation or catechism? How do you determine when a person is ready for baptism in such a context?
Well, how do we know when the person's ready to become a priest over there? Because we don't have an Orthodox tradition. So what are you going to do? Either you need priests or you don't need them. You need them. So you have to ordain people, local people, and do the best you can by catechizing them and trusting that everything will be okay. In my case, I have, for the most part, had fairly good results, except for some that were not, and they had to be cast aside. So we have that freedom to as it were, get rid of priests far easier than you would have to do it here. Yeah.
So, but for lay people also, how do you determine?
We have a standard catechism. We begin basic with the Nicene Creed, and we explain what that is. That's basically the fundamentals of the church.
And once they've gone through that,
it's not automatic. It's not like the next day.
Okay.
I will have them being catechized for several weeks, and then when they are ready, I will ask questions. I will have them all come to the church, and I will ask different questions to see that we're all, on the same boat.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
long does that process typically take?
It depends. It could take months, it could take several weeks. Depends.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Father.
Your Grace, your own sister was ordained into the diaconate. Can you explain why and then what her, because this has become a hot topic.
I wouldn't call it ordained because that's a sacrament, right?
So she,
No, it's like it's not. I don't know how it happened that the Patriarchate has decided to return back to the ancient office of deaconess, which exists in the New Phoebe, for example. It's in the Acts of the Apostles. There's no doubt. It's biblical. There's no doubt about it. Even John Chrysostom mentions that diaconesses. So it's patristic and it's biblical. But for various historical reasons, it was dropped. The new Alexandrian deaconess concept is not a sacramental office. It is like a nun. It's like a blessing. Okay? So what happened to Mary was that during the liturgy, I wasn't even aware that it was happening. We were doing the liturgy, and the patriarch on the throne, who was visiting us, called her over. And in the middle of the liturgy, he gave her a blessing that she's a deaconess. What does that mean? It's a blessing. It's not a sacramental office at this stage. So she cannot perform anything liturgical function whatsoever, but she can enter the hiero, the sanctuary. She can enter there. She may assist us in not sacramentally, but I mean cleaning things, making sure the table is okay, the everything, and in terms of just cleaning things up, there's no problem. But she would not be allowed to give out Holy Communion, to give it out. No, she can't do that. But she has these privileges. She can go to the altar. She can chant. She's allowed to wear the black robe with the orarion, the deacons. That's it. That's it. It's more like a nun.
Your phrase, there were pictures of her giving communion.
Who? Not my sister. That was a mistake. That was a mistake.
Not your sister, I think one that...
I know, in the Congo.
Yeah.
That was a mistake. I think that the local metropolitan did not fully understand what the diaconate for the deaconess office was for the Patriarchate. It did not, to the best of my knowledge, and I can stand corrected, because certainly we don't allow our deaconess to do that,
But did he ordain her?
No, it's not an ordination.
Yeah, well, I understand the patriarch didn't do that in your case with your sister. But the other metropolitan, did he ordain her because there are pictures of her giving communion and even making petitions during the divine liturgy?
That's wrong. That's wrong.
Well, whether it's wrong or not, it's another story.
Yeah.
The question is, did it happen?
I'm told I did.
How is the Patriarchate dealing?
Yeah, well, that's something the Patriarchate has to investigate. It has to investigate that, because I think there's been a misunderstanding between some local metropolitans and the Patriarchate. The communication is very difficult in Africa. It's very difficult. Telephone lines sometimes work, sometimes don't work. Email, when you've got Wi-Fi, if you've got Wi-Fi, the communication is, just to reach my metropolitan sometimes, is quite difficult. But I'm going to investigate this
Curious, because it raises questions.
I agree.
For us, and here we have, I don't know if you're aware, but we have an organization. It's not sanctioned by the church. It's an organization by women that they're trying to restore the diaconate.
Yes.
And of course, we allow them to for discussion purposes. But it's something that...
But here is where knowledge of ancient history comes into play. The original deacons were not a liturgical office. It was an office of social welfare. It was an office of distribution of food. Why? Because the apostles didn't want to distribute food, because they wanted to go on to preach and baptize. So they ordained, they had the office of deacons was established, Stephanos and the other 7, in order for them to be going around the tables to give out, nothing to do with liturgy, nothing to do with worship, nothing to do with handing out communion. It was just putting food on the table instead of the apostles doing that. So when the deaconesses is mentioned in Paul's letter, Deaconess Phoebe, it's not for liturgical. It was purely social work. So just the knowledge of early Christianity will tell you that. Yeah. Any other polemical issues?
Your Grace, question. In Western countries, the birth rates have fallen. Judging from the images that you've shown us and the videos that you've shown, it doesn't seem like this is the case in Africa.
No, it's not. It's not.
And if that is the case, then is there a type of education that do you focus on this type of education at all in terms of, forgive me for asking this, but in terms of like sexual safety and whatnot?
Mm-hmm.
For especially for the kids that come in, or those that graduate, or...
In other words, what do you mean? Like, do we teach them what is wrong and what is right in terms of the use of their bodies?
Correct, but also just in terms of knowing that so many children are left out to die. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. We are concerned about all that. Concerning the first question, there's no doubt that we teach the children straight out of the Bible, straight out of the church tradition, what is wrong and what is right morally, sexually, what is wrong, what is right. At the same time, you have to be careful that you don't expose your children to concepts they don't understand. Sure. But when they're becoming of age, like for our orphan children now, they're becoming teenagers, we segregate them, the boys in one orphanage, the girls in the other orphanage, and we try to, in a gentle way, of course, to explain that, the responsibilities that come around with growing up. In terms of the issue of the abandonment of children, it does happen, and unfortunately, another reason why children are abandoned, I don't know whether we have the same in Kenya, is if a child is crippled or handicapped, disabled, and they are becoming a burden on the family, they will be abandoned. They will be abandoned. And they form their own gangs. They get together and form their own gang. In fact, I used to take care of such a gang of they're very, very angry people. Very angry. So would I be angry if I was thrown away by my mother because I can't walk. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. Diputado. Malista.
Yes, I wanted to...
Come forward, Father. Okay, all right.
Wanted to make a contribution about juju and the rest.
Do you have juju in Africa? In Kenya?
Yeah, we have juju, but in Kenya we have like 43 ethnic groups.
That's right.
A few of them, like 5, accept juju openly. The rest of the communities don't, and especially my Kikuyu tribe, because it is the most populous.
Yes.
In the unwritten laws of the tribe, it is a capital offense to practice juju.
Really?
Yes, and if the community, they catch you, if they know that you practice juju, not trouble.
They'll kill you.
Definitely. They come for you at night.
Oh, no.
Yes,
Yeah.
they come for you at night and ban you. Also, it applies to stealing with violence. If in my tribe, if the people know that you steal and use violence to steal, if you steal food and sit there to eat, nobody will ask you. If I find you in my house eating my food, I'll ask you, where do you come from?
Yeah.
Yes, I was hungry. What are you doing eating the food?
Yeah.
You eat, but you don't take away.
Okay.
That is acceptable, totally acceptable. If I'm found chasing somebody who was stealing food and eating, I am taken as the offender. But if somebody is stealing, using violence,
Yeah.
that's a capital
But Father,
offense.
we
They
have
are written.
in Kenya that group of the what do you call it? Who want to go back to the original Kikuyu.
Yeah, that's
what do you call them? You know.
Yeah, there is.
I forgot the name now. They are pretty violent.
Oh, that was something that they were. Those were criminals that were concocting a type of a religion.
Okay.
And affiliating it to like the traditional way of worship.
What was the name? Yeah, I
It
forgot.
was Mungeki.
Mungiki.
Yes, that was a criminal gang.
Are they still around?
No, they were kicked away by the tribesmen.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
just so you know, I wanted to
Clarify. Yeah.
that in my tribe.
It's unacceptable.
Completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
I remember this year in April, it happened in my locality that there was this group which was stealing cattle and using violence, and the community mobilized one weekend. They mobilized like 700 young men there to go and catch that group. They managed to catch one, and usually they will burn you alive. Like
Yeah. So there you are. So if you're going to steal, don't go to Kenya, okay? All right. Okay, if there's nothing else, we can wrap it up tonight. There's one more? Yes, sir.
We've spoken earlier that we'd like to close with maybe something personal from your life, and we spoke that maybe you would discuss with us that pivotal night where you had an actual experience of both the heights and the depths of the spiritual world.
I don't like talking about it because it's like something personal, and it's like I'm advertising something which may be holy. But since the Father asked, I cannot deny that I have seen a vision. I know it's going to sound crazy. I've seen a vision of Christ. I have seen it. And that's what changed everything. That's what changed my whole life. Now, I don't like saying it because it looks like I'm boasting. But the only reason why I did receive it was because there was no other way I would have turned to Christ. I was too much into Marxism, too much into atheism, too much. There was no other way I would have been who I am now unless I had seen something like that. What I saw, finished. Everything changed. So I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you.